of Niti Aayog. Without any further ado, I'll request Dr. Virmani to kindly share his deliberations with the august audience, please.
Thank you, sir. You were having very strange
ये है अच्छा वो है नहीं वो
And I
वहाँ से करेगा
I have seen the partiality when we beating the prices due to the beauty and the preference of child. Just following that. Yeah.
ठीक है दे देगा
Very uncommon things.
No, because
Like,
I have a name of two big players in US.
with great barracks.
So Mr. Agarwal, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to start. Are you going to give me a this thing?
And, then they made arrangements for land. For
Are they taking a break? Maybe you should have had a break.
No, sir, you can please start.
Yeah, please.
May I request everyone to kindly be seated? Dr. Virmani is about to begin his presentation. Kindly take your seats.
You'll change it?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So, can we start or what?
Please.
Okay. Yeah, next one.
No.
So, I'm going to talk about de-risking and diversifying manufacturing, which I think is the overall. That's why I generally prefer to speak first, but in this case you had me in the middle, but you have to, the perspective is very important. I've given variations of this talk in many places, and in most places it gives you a better framework, an approach, and some of the questions which you have in a way you'll see fit actually into this very easily. The role of manufacturing in the world and India, you heard these controversies about whether India should go for manufacturing or services, etc. I think those are irrelevant kind of arguments. But the issue is, why is the difference in paths? So policy reforms for growth in the last 10 years, I'll talk about that, which lays the framework for the future. Some new opportunities and trends, many of which you are aware of, but I think it's very important to put it in this framework because many questions then actually answer themselves. And finally, the critical role of Indo-US economic cooperation in de-risking and diversifying supply chains. So some of those questions you're concerned with actually fit into this overall framework. And in some sense, hopefully, I won't even have to spell out the details of the Indo-US part. I will a little bit, but we can take that in the question and answer if there's some, if it's not clear. Next. Ugly wali? Yeah. So, we know from global development of manufacturing that basically the share of manufacturing in both value-added and employment rises, peaks, and then declines. So whether it's Europe, Latin America, Southeast Asia, it's happened everywhere. Okay. The only difference is the Latin American one was lower peak and earlier. The Southeast Asian one was later and higher. Okay. Europe is kind of in the middle, the standard. India is different. India's manufacturing share in value-added and employment rose but plateaued out. So it's never had a peak nor a decline. So that's where, in some sense, my argument from the importance start from there. And the reasons were import protections, SSI reservations, anti-FDI, etc., labor laws, some of which have been addressed up to 2003 and some afterwards. Next one. So I will briefly give you an idea of the reforms since in the last 10 years because they are actually laying the foundation for future growth. And it's very important for all of you to listen and in your interactions with the US because this is why the surprises are coming. People have not accounted for this. I have been talking about it, I think, even in PhD. I don't know if your Secretary General is here. I talked about it once about 5 years ago or something like that, 4 years ago. and it's very important. That's why everybody is under predicting growth. They're talking about 6%, and in the last 2 years we got more than 7%. So it's important to understand this framework because it's laying the foundation. If you don't mind my saying so, probably you are also not fully aware of all these reforms which have already happened. But that's not a personal comment because many people are not. So basically, policy and institutional reform, they are systematic. They are going through every product and service and saying where are the reforms not done yet. I'm speaking this not from newspaper articles. I was part of the 91 reforms. I know exactly what our strategy was then. It was manufactured goods and it was the financial sector connected with it. We did not touch any of the others. So here we are going through systematically in the last 10 years, factor markets, what we call labor codes, entrepreneurship, management. You heard of the IBC, the code, technology, all areas which were left from reforms. Public sector reform, first time ever, okay, systematically. You heard of GST reform, but also the corporate tax in 2019, and so on. Abolishing of outdated laws, decriminalization of economic, everything. I'm not saying everything is done, but we are aware of it and we are systematically doing it. Next slide. So the strategic industry policy, this is a struggle which, when it happens, everybody thinks, this long, it could have been done long ago. No, I've been struggling for 20 years, since 90s, to do public sector reforms and strategic industry policy. It was always little bits of privatization, etc., going back and forth, etc. But here we have a systematic policy announced on it and actions taken. But the policy is very important. It's an approved policy and things will happen. They are happening. Bureaucratic reform, social welfare reform, infrastructure reform, I mentioned multimodal transport. So again, it's systematic. It's looking at every gap. Waterways, for example, the role of waterways. We've been talking about multimodal policy for 30 years, but never the integrating with the role of internal waterways. So systematic, thorough, and complete. Okay, next. So that's to give you a flavor of the kind of reforms, but I think underlying it, to understand the big change from the socialist to the market economy, that is a fundamental change. Again, people are not appreciating. People, I don't mean only you here because you are affected by it, but internationally. People you interact with, foreigners. I think it's very important. So I think now there is a very clear understanding of the role of markets and government. I call it an Indic market economy because there is a difference of emphasis. We say there is a US version of market economy, European, and I like to distinguish the Indic part of it. In case you're interested, I'm not going to go into details. There's a Niti paper. I told them to put it here, but it's not here. But there's a Niti paper called Bharatiya model of, this one, sorry. Which you can download and look at if you're really interested in the details. So clear definition of the role of markets, role of government, private sector, and NGOs. So what is it very quickly? We believe in a competitive market economy with fewer monopoly segments, complete and efficient markets. Okay, this is an important difference from both the US and Europe because we have a lot of incomplete and not very efficient markets. They are developed. That's part of the focus of development. That is why I call it an Indic market. We pay a lot of attention to markets which are missing. You would say, what markets? Well, for skills, for example. Okay, I have talked to tens of people. There is no market for different types of skills. Okay, so there's a role for government, etc. I can go into it if there are questions, but I just want to give you an overview. So role of government to focus on public goods and regulation of externalities, to create the right market environment, as I said, pre-competition, and welfare transfers. In the Indic system or the Bharatiya, we have very it's a very important role we have under the empowerment of every group in the country. Again, that is not something the American or the European model of market economy focuses on. But we have to, and again, as I said, the justifications are here in this paper for those who are interested. And empowerment. And of course, the role of private sector is to compete, innovate, and invest. Next slide. So that's by way of background in a way. Now I'm going to go to the heart of the subject, and that is the new opportunities there for India, India's role in the world over the next 30 years. So the first element of this is global and Indian demography. In the next slide, I'm going to show you some data. So basically what it relates to is the demographic decline of the developed countries, particularly EU and Japan. America is more stable. I'll give you some numbers, but generally the declining share of working population in the advanced countries, what we call developed countries. Developed countries is a formal definition from the IMF, so I've used that definition. So India's share of working population is rising. So our dynamic comparative advantage, and we have to build it. When I say dynamic, it doesn't happen. You have to build it. Okay? So we'll go from kind of low to unskilled, labor-intensive goods and services to semi-skilled, labor-intensive, middle skills to high skills. Now you may say we have all these global competency centers. When I'm talking about India, we are talking about 1.4 billion people. We are not talking about 1 million people employed in global competency centers. This is the broad picture. The overall will shift like this. Has to. We will make sure that it happens. And the final one, which is the key, where the US and India really have to work very closely together, and the main thrust of my talk here is the supply chain diversification opportunities. So the opportunity to promote low and medium skilled labor intensive manufacturing. Okay, that's the key thing we have to grab. I'm not going to talk too much about services. Again, I can take it in the question, but I want to focus on the manufacturing supply chains. Next one. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So what is the demography? It's very important to understand it. You look at the first two columns, you see a lot of red. Okay, what I have done is I have given the world share of working age population in the last three columns and the change over the from now to 2050. And you see all the negatives. That is the decline. Okay, the first column is what has already happened, the decline. The further decline is in the second column. And you see it's all negative. You can look at the high income countries, USA, Europe, UK, even USA, by the way. Though USA has a lot of immigration, which keeps it low, but the immigration we know all over the world is now being resisted. So US is a country built on immigration, but even there is now a build-up of resistance. So the high-income countries and then even the upper middle. Why I have given you upper middle is kind of they are our competitors, you could say, right, in this whole supply chain. So you look at that, you see even China, huge declines in working age population. That's the key. It's not the population. This is the working age. These are the workers. Okay. Russia, of course, Thailand, another potential competitor of India, it will have a decline. Mexico, sorry, the second column is what's going to happen in future, right? So look at the second column. So Mexico, Vietnam, which again is talked about as getting supply chain. So the only one over there you see positive, the green 0.3 is India. Okay, so that is a big demographic change which you have to make sure is understood by the developed countries you deal with.
Which means the labor prices in these countries will be going up.
Yeah, we'll have clarification later if you don't mind. I don't know because
may I request audience to
please
kindly
note it down.
kindly
I'll be
hold their
very happy
horses.
to answer all
Please
questions.
do hold your horses. We'll do it.
So this demographic change requires skills. Skills is one of my things. I have talked to tens of people, and again I give this as an invitation. Anybody who is works on skills and wants to come and talk to me, my doors are always open because it's a tough job, but this is the thing we plan to do and we will do. Okay, so decline. Just to complete that story there, that's where that unskilled, semi-skilled comparative advantage is going to happen. We have to develop those skills for this 1.4 billion. Actually, it's not 1.4, let's say half the population, right, which will be the working people. Next one. So what is it? So the geoeconomics, geopolitics, and security risks all are leading. And here it's a bit of a strong statement, but take it, I'm speaking to you as an economist, as the macro member of the NITI. I'm not giving you government policy, though, of course, there is a lot of overlap, in what I think and what the government is doing. But some of these statements are very strong, which a government will not make. So I'm just giving you a little caution. This is not what government is saying, I'm saying. Okay? So I think high-tech decoupling is going to happen. I predicted this in 2008, 2009. It's in process, and partial economic decoupling. We've gone through these various things about decoupling, de-risking, etc. I have been very clear since 2009. After former President Trump put those tariffs on China, I've been talking about this since then, not now. So to me, de-risking, it's obvious. I'll give you some numbers on how much the monopoly of China over manufacturing. It's amazing, actually. But diversified portfolio is the essence of risk management. You talk about investment. We talk about diversified portfolio. It's amazing that the world has tolerated this degree of concentration, and you'll see how concentrated it is. So I think it's going to happen. Whether it takes 5 years or 10 years or 15, that is under our control to some extent. That's where the cooperation comes in. But it's going to happen. So 2 economic groups I expect, is my forecast, it's not something which is inevitable. The democratic market economies, such as the Quad, EU, and the Quad, the countries in the Quad. I hope everyone knows the Quad. Yes, India is in that group. So I think we will be part of that, but we will have a certain degree of flexibility because of our age-old relationship with Russia. In selective areas, selective things, we will use and interact. Actually, it will be much more equal relationship with Russia. But by and large in this group, because it will be a kind of a loose group, it will not be the old-fashioned, alliance or anything like that. And of course, the China group, I've given some names. So basically, my second fundamental point is that we need dualistic policies. They have to be different for these 2 groups, so to say. Okay, and I'll tell you something about it. Next. So we have this, we used to, I think 5 years ago, people used to proudly say, oh, China is factory of the world. Okay, in fact, let's see what that means. People never looked at it, what that means. Okay. So PRC, I prefer to call it PRC and not China, because it is the People's Republic of China we are talking about here, not Republic of China. This is a thing people forget. It's ruled by the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, I have been following, if anybody has followed Indian politics since the time of the first communist government in Kerala, the United Front government in West Bengal, we know something about the communists. They've been here in our country. We know how they act. Okay. So just some numbers, and I'll give you a whole table which I won't spend too much time on. In telecom equipment, EDP and office equipment, they have 40% of the world market. Okay, 40%. In textiles, it's 47. There are certain items which I didn't mention there, pottery and light fixtures and fittings. It is more than 2/3. It's a huge monopoly. You've never seen, you look at the data for the world history for 100 years or more. You've never seen numbers like this. Much higher concentration at 6 and 8 digit levels. As our foreign minister said in USA about 3 months ago, if this was happening in the US, they would let loose the antitrust, the anti-monopoly policy is called antitrust. Okay? But it happened in China, you never looked at it. Nobody noticed. Okay? So labor, so what's the result? This is again connecting to the demographics and what I said about dynamic comparative advantage. The labor-intensive supply chains, particularly, there are 2 types. We have to keep this in mind. This is partly informational for people for manufacturing. There are really 2 types. One is consumer goods which are basically, what the PRC did was linear backward integration, very deliberately. They started with a supply at the front end, then they backward integrated. This did not happen by some simple competitor. They did it deliberately. Okay? They have the ability to impose non-tariff barriers. They just have to tell their firms, okay, integrate. And they do it. And of course they do it. Why? Because you get subsidized everything. That is understood. If you do what the party wants, they will take. So that's just by way of background. But the important thing to understand is that the consumer goods, basically like leather goods, garment, toys, rubber, it's backward integration. But the electronics, ADP, capital goods are a little more complicated. So here, it requires a different kind of policy, okay? Because parts have to be able to move in and out. So a simpler customs duty structure or an FTA, I will come to that, is very important for these type of goods, okay? Because things have to move in and out. When it's a simple linear change, it's very simple. You can do backward integration, and China has shown it. So the example is there if we want to do, for example, okay? Okay, this is a standard, the clarification is fine, I will explain. Backward integration means you go back in stages. So you're making, let's say leather garments, which is simpler to explain. Then you start doing the finished leather, then the leather, etc. You move backwards, okay? Similarly for textiles, you keep doing the inputs, you start with the final assembly or something and move backwards. So, okay, so complex networks are more difficult. We talk about an ecosystem and stuff like that. Again, we can take it up in the thing, but it's important to remember this distinction. Next, yeah, you go on to the next, good. So this is just, I've already talked about the monopoly, etc., but the key point here is, this was done consciously, it was not a public plan, it was a kind of internal planning. They didn't announce it to the world because they wanted everybody to think this is a competitive market, just like the USA. I mean, there's such an absurd proposition. I mean, I used to laugh at it, frankly. They used to project to everybody in the world, we are a competitive open economy. That's not true. Everything was deliberately done, okay, every stage. So the point here is they used unfair mercantilist policies to dominate exports. Now, I think it is the credit of the Trump administration, I would say. I don't want to get individual names, but that they've recognized this. Actually, it's 100% true of China. Okay, and world and the point here is, world can use similar policies with respect to China. If they can use unfair policies, I don't see anything wrong with other countries using unfair policies against them, not against everybody else. They are the ones who used it. Why not everybody else use it? Next. So the question, now we are coming to the stuff. How can India maximize manufacturing employment? Okay. So it's very important to understand there are some people who are still so taken by China, they say all the opportunities in China and Southeast Asia. That's just not true. Okay. It's just wrong. So let me tell you why. So high-income developed countries, I've given the names, their economies are complementary to India. Okay, this is now where we are getting into the specific topic of your discussion here. Okay, they are the source of technology and FDI. They are the largest manufactured for, I'll give you data in the next slide. Okay, they are the largest market for manufactured exports. People think, oh, there's this big opportunity, go to China, Southeast Asia. No, it's just not true. Look at the numbers. 2/3 of supply chains are led by, 2/3, by the way, 2/3 of trade, actually, sorry, that's slightly wrong. I don't know how I missed it, of world trade is now done through MNC supply chains. We never got supply chains. We have been competing for that 1/3 of the global market. We are not there in the supply chain. We are just starting. You all heard of Apple now. Okay, I'll say a little bit more. So, and 90 to 95% of them are headquarters in the developed countries, specifically USA. USA probably has 75 or more % of the global MNCs. So it's very important. Okay, that's the message I want to give both to all of you and to my friend here from the embassy. So we recognize that, and all of us must recognize, okay? So we have to get those US companies here which run these supply chains. That's the only way you can really step up export. When I say really, I'm not talking about 10, 20%. I'm talking about doubling, tripling, quadrupling, okay? We completely missed this for 70 years or 60, whatever. So, yeah. So there is a close association between MNC, FDI in a country. So it's linked to FDI, okay? In 2003, I was member secretary of a committee headed by my old friend Shri N.K. Singh, where we first proposed 100% FDI in defense. You know how long it took to get there? At least 10, 15 years.
Mindset, total mindset.
Yeah, because my argument was simple. You are willing to import 100% stuff. Why not let them make it 100%? I mean, it's just a simple, logical argument. Anyway, let's not get distracted, okay? Yeah, it's a simple argument. So red carpet to greenfield FDI, we are doing it. Somebody was asking a question, what do we need to do? We are doing it. We've studied these things. We know what needs to be done. You have to get these MNCs who are the core of the supply chain in India, whether they are from the US, from EU, from Japan, wherever. Okay? But as I said, most of them are in the US, so there's no, there's no point arguing about that. So there is no doubt in our mind, okay, that we have to get US supply chains. So this is already happening, okay? And of course, we still have to do a lot of things. Remember, I said reforms. That doesn't mean everything is done. We are very conscious of it. Things have to continue to be done. And I'll give you a quote from PM at the end. So, table. Next, let's go to the table. The numbering is wrong. This is just the first or second table. Second, but it's okay. So here it is. So this is the, when I put together these numbers, even I was surprised. So let me read them out to you. The people just don't understand. So US, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are all high-income developed countries, by the way. This thing about Korea being an emerging market is always nonsense. I mean, it's just wrong. It's just because they put Korea in emerging markets 20 years ago, they keep saying it's an emerging market. No, it's a high-income developed country. Okay, so if you take these 5 very quickly, they are the source of 60% of global FDI. That is 7 times China's. By the way, this thing will be here. I have no problem if you distribute it to your members. Okay. Of course, whenever you use it, you should refer to the talk, but that's okay. And you can put the talk on your website if you want.
There are some other tables that people have found interesting.
Yeah, but I'll just change the numbers and send the revised thing. So imports, 53% of world manufactured imports is from these 5 countries. All the numbers are there, okay? I'm just giving you a summary. This is 5 times that of China. They don't import manufactured goods. They do backward integration, they eliminate it as soon as possible. Japan, just these 3 smaller countries, US and EU are the biggies, of course. Japan, UK constitute as large a market for foreign manufactured goods as China. Just the 3 of them. We have FTAs with Japan and Korea, UK, we are doing it. Okay, very important. They'll be equally important, as important as China as far as we are concerned. Of course, as I said, the big thing is the US. So FTAs with US, EU, UK, Taiwan also. People have become aware of now, but I've been talking about economic policy on Taiwan for a long time. Okay, next one. So what is the, I guess, how long have I taken? I'll try to rush.
I think people are very
important. Interested? Okay.
Very interesting.
Okay. So what, sorry, no, where are we? We've done this. Next one. Next slide. Yeah. So it's what I call a dualistic trade policy, okay? So that basically means one policy for China, another for those developed countries. The most important is those 5 I listed there from our perspective, US, EU, and then a kind of general whatever free trade policy for everybody else, kind of, okay? So special positive consideration for the 5 developed countries, negative for China, and normal free trade policy for everybody else. That is my concept of Atmanirbhar and what I call it a dualistic policy. And I'll tell you why it is not inconsistent with government. I will quote some things for you. Okay, so this is kind of a technical thing which I won't go into, where PRC have studied from, I have a 2006 paper which is in the old Planning Commission. You can now find it on eGrow website if you, again, for people who are really interested. What I showed, the title of that paper was in China's socialist market economy. That is the correct term for PRC, by the way. And and lessons for democratic developing countries, because you cannot do all the things that they do. Everything we do has to be put in Parliament. Everybody knows what it is. All the laws have to be approved by Parliament. They're all there. Okay, they don't have to approve anything. They just quietly do it and do it. Nobody even outside finds out. Okay, and if they want to speak to the Chinese people, they speak in Chinese. And say completely opposite to in English outside, and people lap it up. Even few researchers who read Chinese, for 30 years they were quiet. Now they are telling us, oh, we knew this, we saw this here. Okay, you knew it, why didn't you tell us? Okay. That's kind of half joke, take it in that spirit. Okay, so I'll leave that, but what I am trying to convey here is there's something I've studied. I've studied the Chinese economy for 25 years, okay? I'm not just coming to it today. So there is something called a socialist market economy I just mentioned, which was devised by two academics called Lerner and Lange, okay? And what Deng Xiaoping did was to implement that concept of a socialist market economy. I'll leave it at that, okay? Anybody is interested, I'll come back to it. So the main point is that the optimal response is symmetry and reciprocity. That is the only way to deal with PRC, and which is why I gave you that extreme thing. If they can have unfair policy, I don't mean exactly that, but to make it simple and understandable, why shouldn't we have the same policies against them? I mean, there's no moral argument here either way, right? I mean, they can do it, but we cannot, which is very funny, way to look at it. Okay, so diversification of supply chains through tariffs on monopoly suppliers. So whatever is it, there are certain things we cannot do as democracies, but we can put higher tariffs. Okay? You have to put them, and that's it, and get it approved by Parliament, right? Okay, next one. Right, there's a China policy. I just mentioned one. I don't want to go into detail. This is not something I want to keep speaking about, because this is my personal view, right? But you understand what I'm saying. Okay. Well, we banned all their, their what do you call it? Apps, right? We've done it.
I think
because
the bordering country concept that
we have a bordering and
that's been a cover for actually.
So we have that. So, but what I am trying to say is, in your interlocution, when people ask or give examples, you tell them China is different. Okay, be very clear. They have played unfair. Don't tell us not to play unfair with them. Okay. Sida. Okay. So as far as FTAs is concerned, I told you the MNC anchored supply chain, 60% to 2/3. I just want to repeat, because this is a very, very important point for you to note and use in your discussions with Americans, EU, whatever, if you ever. Majority headquarters in US, EU, UK, Japan. And within that majority, US is a large proportion. That is the one reason why I wanted to come here, and I'm glad Mr. Hyman is here and listening to it. So we have a competitive disadvantage. EU's FTA with Europe, EU, gives them straight away a 12.5% advantage on electronics. When I talk to electronics producers, this is it. Of course, we are going to do everything about infrastructure, but that pales in significance. There is no estimate I know which shows that infrastructure costs in India are more than 12% higher. Even that logistic cost thing is now, when we are getting accurate data, is half of what people say. It's just not true anymore. It may have been true 15 years ago. So my point is people are not upgrading their information. That's the point. I'm not saying they're wrong. They are still lagging. A decade behind. Huge changes have happened. Okay? And that is why the World Bank's logistics thing, we are among the highest. You know, in sea trade, they say, I don't know where they got the data, but they say we have the least turnaround time in the world. People still think I remember personally in the 91 reforms, the turnaround time, I don't remember the exact, used to be in months. In some ports, if I'm not mistaken, remember that is 25 years ago, my memory is getting a little hazy now, but it was like 2 or 3 months of turnaround time. Now we are talking about days. It's a complete sea change. People don't realize. Okay, anyway, where were we? Right. So rest of the world I already mentioned, but I want to mention this. This is something PM has said, the Commerce Minister has said, everybody has said. Our Atmanirbhar is not shoddy quality. He is saying we must, whatever PIL, etc., PLI, we must have an export quality benchmark. You cannot compete with everybody in the world unless you raise your quality. Okay? And export, and the other thing which people do not understand, which I've been trying to tell the states, exporting firms' profits, productivity, and the skill level of their people is higher. So states which have more exports will gain in their domestic sectors. It's not some favor you're doing to the union government. You will gain. So states should, in my view, again this is personal view, should promote exports for their own good. Not to help me in the union government. I'll do my job. I have to do whatever I have to do. Next one. Okay. So I want to quote this and then I'll end with a last slide. And okay. So Atmanirbhar Bharat. This is a quote from a recent interview that PM gave to the FT. As I said, you please you distribute to all your members. It's very important they understand it. Huh? So I will read it out to you. We aspire to create conditions where everyone sees value in being to India to invest and expand their operations here. We envision a system where anyone from around the world feels at home in India. Don't believe all that propaganda. This is PM's commitment. Believe me, for the few times I've interacted personally, he is deadly serious about whatever he says. He never says anything. People blame him for not saying things, but when he says something, he is very clear. He knows exactly what he's saying. Okay, I can assure you from my 2 or 3 personal meetings with him. Okay, anyone who feels at home in India where our processes and standards are familiar and welcoming. That is the inclusive global standard system we aspire to build. Okay, please take that seriously. I think all the ministers should, but it's not my job here to advise ministers. But I can assure you, he means exactly what he says. Next one. Coffee. Okay, so I just wanted to conclude after all this. So this is an interesting graph. I call it the economic power index because I developed that index again 25 years ago. All my big work was at that time. Though I have some good papers on the pandemic from 2020. But okay, so you just need to look at the graph here. Okay, so the power index is always relative to the biggest power, which is clearly the US. So you think of US as 1. Okay, I've not given it there, but there's a 1 there on the left, the top. That is US. Okay, so everybody is power, economic power. If you want, think of it as economic power. Think of it as economic power. It is relative to the US. Okay, so it's a relative index of economic power. So the green one is the EU. Okay, so you see what is happening? It's on a declining trend. The blue one is China. It was on a huge uprising trend, and you suddenly got a kink there. Right? You see where it's crossing the green? That is roughly around now. Okay? Right now, 22, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Why has that happened? If you look at my old forecast, I've been giving forecasts since 2004. That blue line used to go up and curve above 1. That means my forecast said that the China would flatten out above the USA. No longer. It's flattening out well before it gets to 1. That means it will not, now I believe it will not catch up. Again, we can discuss now or in a separate lecture we can discuss. But that is a big change in my own forecasts. I have no hesitation in admitting.
So which is the last year of your graph?
Last is 2050.
50, okay.
Best way to, and that cross, okay, the second one you'll see another date. That one is roughly, as I told you, that kink is occurring around now. Okay? And I must give full credit to Xi Jinping because that has made me confident enough to change this forecast. It's not that I could not done it without him, but now I'm confident. Okay, as long as he's there, he's whatever for life. I feel reasonably confident. Okay, so that's the second. The third one is red is India. Okay, before you can see it's an uptrend, but I want to come back to that, right? The important one there is the crossover from the blue. Okay, blue is Japan. That crossover is what we have been predicting, what I have predicted as 3 to 5 years from now. Okay, thank you. So that date of crossover you can think of as 23 plus 4, roughly, 27 or 28. Remember, the exact dates don't matter. The important thing is to understand the trends and the rough crossover. Don't, if any forecaster tells you this is going to happen on this year, that just don't believe them. Okay, let me advise you. I have done forecasting for 30 years. I always give a band around it. But in this case, it's too difficult because there are too many countries. So it's very hard to give bands for everybody. You won't be able to see anything. Okay? The two other interesting things I want to show you, and Germany will happen, which is not shown here. So Japan and Germany will overtake in 3 to 5 years. Okay? Obviously, first one, then the other. It doesn't matter whether it's Germany first, Japan, they keep changing. 3 months ago, people said, oh, Germany has overtaken Japan or something. They keep changing. I mean, people keep saying different things. So it doesn't matter. It's the rough what really matters. Okay? And then I've given two of them down there. Russia, purple, and UK. Russia is not a future power. It's a past power. UK we've overtaken. Russia we had also overtaken first, then UK. Okay? So that is important to understand. Now let me come back to the red. And I want to leave you with a caution. There is actually a couple of more slides, but I think I'll skip those, but I'll stop at this one. It's very important. I run into two types of people in India, and I'm just talking about Indians now, not foreigners. Okay? One type are down at that bottom. They think we'll always be like this. We are and we'll remain there. The others who are optimistic suddenly jump to as if we are already up there. Both are serious mistakes, please understand. And again, let me assure you that effort, that needs an effort. We need continuing reforms of that. I had a slide on reforms and all that. I'll just leave it because I prefer to answer, see your reaction and questions. But it's very important to understand both for outsiders, outsiders I mean business, people, and for the government. I can assure you again that as far as I know, the Prime Minister and this government understand this very well. He has often used the word continuing reforms. Okay? In fact, a few days ago. Okay? So we need continuing reforms. We need to do all the things I've outlined there, welcoming, etc., which PM has said. And please don't make the mistake of being on both ends. We are rising power. We have a long way to go. Just have this graph in mind. See how long the way is. We are not there. Okay? But we will get there. Let me assure you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Amazing, sir. Absolutely amazing. Brilliant is the word, sir.